Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome. We are screaming into the end of 2022 if you're listening to this in real time. How are you feeling? How have your holidays been? Are you tired? Are you overstimulated? Are you rested? Are you taking care of yourself? This is a great episode that Jen and I talk about New Year's resolutions. We both have pretty strong feelings about New Year's resolutions. And we talk about some alternatives and some ways to recenter on yourself, to focus on where you have been, where you are, where you'd like to go without having that win, lose, setting a resolution. If resolutions work for you, then great, keep doing it. My experience is that they're very short-lived, but Jen and I talk about some of the barriers that get in the way, some of the ways that we can take care of ourselves, and really looking at how can we care for ourselves and figure out what it is that we're wanting more of or less than, and kind of wiggle our way towards that, as opposed to this, what I call the binary. I'm going to save money, either win because I save money or I lose because I don't. Or I'm going to exercise so many times a week and I don't, so then I feel like I lose. And how do we set goals and intentions? And we give lots of examples of what that might look like. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. And maybe we can send 2022 off and start with a fresh year for 2023. And now, on to the show. Hey, Jen, how are you?
Oh my goodness. Do you want the real answer? Or do you want just that I'm fine?
I want the real thing.
Oh gosh. My heart is like really pounding in my chest. It's been like an anxious week. And
how come?
Well, it just sort of feels like it's in the air. I mean, there's certainly a lot of big stuff going on in my own personal life, but when we're recording this, it's the day after Election Day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been just a lot of that kind of in the air. So I think it's residual.
Sure.
It's so funny. It takes a while. I once had a professor talk about anxiety, and it's like a herd of elephants storming into your house, and it takes them like seconds to destroy the place and like hours to like wander around and move on.
Right.
And so nothing against elephants. I love elephants. But
yeah,
I think especially as an HSP, there are times when we go through something and then there is some, just like for me anyway, the residual physical sensations that kind of stick with me. And I have to be super careful not to interpret those as, oh my God, the elephants are still here. It's just taken a while to clean up.
Yeah. I think there's a huge thing around not attaching danger to discomfort and how we're feeling. I think that's huge. And I was just thinking, yes, in the mornings, you and I usually talk because you're 3 hours ahead of me. You usually send me a Marco Polo. So I wake up to a Polo. Yesterday morning, I woke up and I just felt like, ugh. And I had water fitness, and I actually didn't polo you right away because I just knew, like, once I get up and moving, it's probably going to shift. And then I did end up talking to you. And then this morning, I woke up and I'm like, oh, it's a great day. I mean, the only thing that's different is I exercised yesterday morning, but like I had ice cream last night. That could have ruined it for me. It just sometimes I'm astounded at how different I can feel just upon waking in the morning. And I've been talking to a couple friends, and it's so easy to attach danger. Oh my gosh, what does this mean? I haven't been exercising. I didn't eat right. I'm always going to feel this way. I'm getting the winter blues. Like whatever that narrative is that you have, and we all have a narrative, that we can attach danger to it, or we go like, oh, isn't this interesting? This is what I'm feeling right now. What's in front of me and what do I need to do? And I think that's probably one of the best lessons and gifts that we can give ourselves, to name what's going on in the moment and to tell a different story. This is just how I'm feeling right now. What's going on in my body? What do I need to do to take care of myself? How can I support myself? What's the next indicated step? Instead of going into that catastrophic thinking, that worst case scenario, which I think is just common, especially if you have trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I feel a lot of big physical sensations. Like I feel them strongly.
Mm-hmm.
And being, like you're saying, really careful about how I interpret them is vital, because it could just be meh, right? And I could turn waking up meh or waking up anxious into like every single problem, because our storytelling is like it's very well. How can we explain this? Well, the simplest explanation is I'm feeling stuff in my body.
Right.
And what do I need?
Right.
I love that. I love that focus. I mean, that's what we started every single session, right, of the HSP course is the how the heck are you? Check in so that we can take care of ourselves. So it's a really vital practice. And it's a daily practice.
Yeah. And I love what parts are showing up. Are you tired? Are you irritable? Are you peaceful? Are you energized? Are you focused? Are you lonely? And what do you need to do to take care of yourself? It's such a great way for us to recenter on ourselves instead of either getting stuck in the feelings and the story or attending to everybody else and their needs at the expense of what's going on with me. It can be a both and.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, I think it's so important to stress that it's a daily practice. This is where I'll say like the things that we do every day, right? Like I don't expect a cup of coffee that I have one morning to last me all week. And I don't expect that my teeth are going to stay clean if I don't brush them a couple times a day. Like this is mental emotional hygiene. And it is something that we need to practice and get used to doing every day.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? I'm segueing abruptly.
It's a new dance move we're going to make up. And we're going to put it on TikTok.
It's a segue. It's a segue. What are your thoughts about New Year's resolutions?
Oh gosh, what are my thoughts about? I can tell you what my physical sensations about New Year's resolutions are.
Tell me.
Physical sensations. Like it started with some tension up in my shoulders. It's felt like this like body, like, when you're a kid and you're in school and you get asked a question, you really don't have any idea. And which actually is funny because that's what the reaction feels like. But I actually have a lot of ideas and a lot. So it's so funny. Like, it's not always the truth of what is really there, the initial response. Yeah. But I have lots of physical sensations. So New Year's resolutions, huh? I kind of hate them. Yeah. I hate them.
I'm with you. I think if you have to wait until the beginning of the year to make changes, you have a good couple weeks that they're going to last, and then you're going to go back to what you want. And it's so much more about the process and the long game than about those short goals that generally burn out definitely by February, March, if you make it that long.
Yeah. Well, definitely, right? I mean, gyms know that. They're so crowded. And then they all empty out. I am curious about it. I think the impulse is good. And certainly if you sit down and you make some meaningful rituals for yourself that come from inside of you, it's great. Like it's a marker. I happen to like using my birthday for stuff like that because I feel like it's my own personal New Year. It's like a New Year for me when it comes to kind of taking stock or setting intentions or I guess you would, even the word resolution, like when we're, I think, I don't know, I tend to enter into things a little more tentatively maybe, but.
Yeah.
And carrying an intention and an aspiration is, keep getting this image of like growth from within as opposed to this like should from the outside in. Yeah. And there's a beautiful thing, like when an egg cracks from the inside, there's life. And if an egg cracks from the outside, there's death.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Probably because I've never been inside of an egg before.
So we actually incubated eggs once in our homeschool when my kids were little, and all of them made it. I think we had a dozen fertilized eggs in an incubator. Oh my gosh, it was a panic. All the little chicks jumping all over the place. But to really think about that metaphor though, right? Because as we were babysitting these eggs and you have to turn them and you have to like, I think you had to mist them. Like there were things that you had to do to the eggs to take care of them. And if we broke them from the outside, that little chicken there was going to die. I'm doing this with like a toddler and a early school aged kid. So that was a very real possibility. But letting it crack open from the inside slowly, and you can't get in there and tell it how to do it or help it. Like, right. So of course I'm talking about an egg, but I'm also talking about perfectionism. I'm talking about things are shoulds. I'm talking about all of these pressures from the outside in, when really what we need to do is make space. I actually think New Year's, if we look at nature, at least here, it's time for sleep. Like, it is time to be buried. There's not a lot going on. It's time to dream, time to figure out what those aspirations might be, like what's tugging you from the inside instead of what's kind of screaming at you from the outside.
Yeah, which that to me is about process and focusing on internally cracking the egg from the inside out, where to me resolutions are very binary. So the resolution is I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to save so much money. And so you either do it or you don't. It's very binary. And so when we don't hit those goals, then we go back to, you either do it or you don't, success or failure, and then you give up, as opposed to, I want to move my body more. I want to be more aware of what I'm doing with my finances. I want to create a nest egg. I want to start saving for retirement. I want to start making healthier food choices. And we proximate towards those, but there's no win or lose or fail with those, because we're just proximating towards what it is that we want. And you can't fail that way. That to me is much more effective and sustainable than these very hardcore goals. And I know there are people that need that, but I think shifting from that external focus to more of an internal focus, there's a lot of fear in that. If I don't have a concrete plan, if I don't set a rule, if I don't, and sometimes we need more structure, sometimes we need less, and we have to honor that. But really focusing on what is it that we're wanting more of, what are we wanting less of, and how can we kind of wiggle our way towards that imperfectly.
Yeah, I love that, because you're right. Like, there's no like instruction with that I want to lose weight, right? Or I want to, whatever it is. But the feeling your way, it's kind of that Joseph Campbell quote I love so much, and I'm going to butcher it, but the spirit of it is like, if you can see your path all laid out in front of you, it's not your path. You make your own path one step at a time. And that's coming from the inside out, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's the idea that I just want to move my body more. Like, you can actually live that now. It's not something in the far off future that you're, either missing them. We're so brutal with ourselves, right? I mean, I know I'm very reactive to disappointment, disappointing others, disappointing myself. And that seems to set us up for that instead of.
Yeah. I love doing year-end writing, and in knowing that we were going to be doing this recording, I usually don't look at my writing from the last year until I go like, oh no, I didn't do my writing. So I read my writing from last year. I didn't finish it. I must have run out of time, because I sit down once or twice and I just write. But I tend to write about how's my relationship with my husband, where I'm at with my kids, where I'm at professionally, where am I at with moving my body, with my health. I think spirituality is something that you can talk about if you've got financial goals. Last year, I was writing about joining this course to write a book. And it's interesting because it's so easy for me to get so caught up in the moment of what's going on, that when I was reading about all of this stuff of where my kids were at with their relationships, and I was struggling with exercising, and Steve would go down to the bay with me because I just couldn't get myself to go because I didn't have anybody to paddle with. And then I ended up paddling like 700 miles from August to August. And I've got these groups that I go with, and I paddle regularly, and I'm doing water fitness. It's like, oh, that's not even a struggle anymore. But had I not read that, because now I have new challenges. And so it's so easy to get caught up in whatever the new stuff is, that it's a great way to push back and get some perspective and to see, where was I a year ago and where am I now? And that it really helps to give me perspective.
Yes, I love looking back on old journals for that.
Yeah.
What you were thinking. I'm not a huge fan of rereading a lot of, and I don't think you should ever read like journals that have been that were emotional processing, but ones that are more like you're talking about, and kind of an assessment of your values and where you're at and how you're doing, what you want to do, your aspirations. And it's cool. I think what you're saying is so cool, because I struggle with structure. And if I try to impose a structure upon myself, like, I'll fight myself. You're not the boss to me. And I'm like, who am I even talking to? Wait a minute, maybe I am, right?
Yeah.
Whereas what you're talking about is kind of building the structure, right? Instead of imposing a structure, and looking at it and acknowledging that we're mysterious, and our ways to get there aren't always the way we think we're going to get there.
Right. I don't know about you, but as a teenager, I journaled a lot, and then I'd find my journals and go back and read them. And it was very hard for me to read. And I ended up getting rid of all of them because it just felt like I was talking about the same thing over and over again. For me, journaling, it probably because I'm such a verbal processor and I'm blessed to have people that I can process with verbally. And once I get it out, then I'm done with it. But for me, what I love about this year end writing is it's kind of a snapshot view. So I don't feel like I get caught in the bog and the stories and probably the podcast. If I had to sit down and listen to all my episodes in a year, that would probably be a lot. And I don't go back and listen to often the difficult episodes because it just kind of re-stirs that stuff up for me. So, everybody has to choose what works for them. And for people that journal daily and that works for you, keep doing it. That's perfect.
Yeah, I've been trying to do it weekly. I've been using this, my next 90 days planner, which I really like a lot. And I haven't gotten to doing it that very often. It was just I'm laughing at the imperfection all over my planner / journal right now. It's funny though, you're making me think about when I was a kid. It's just funny. I'm having this realization about when you have this noun-like picture of what you're supposed to be. I used to go through and I would write in my journal and I would write things. Back in the day, it had a little lock and it was called a diary, right? And I'm really young now. This is probably even maybe before I was a teenager. And if things didn't pan out with certain things, I would go back and scribble it out. Right? And it was really telling about, not being in like a growth mindset, right? It was a very fixed, and I was like, "Ooh, gosh, I have to like," and how much is that a big problem in our society right now? This like rewriting history, or not? And I'm just so interested in how like I was not able to do that for myself when I was young and be gentle and have like figuring it out energy. I was like, oh no, let me like scribble that all out, and I just think that's a nice little revealing thing about where I come from, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's different for everybody. And just because Jen and I talk about something that works for us, my hope is to validate that if what you hear doesn't work for you, that you go, oh, there's another way to do it. But if what we're talking about works for you, keep doing it, because our brains work differently. We're wired differently, and we need to find ways and systems that really work and nurture and nourish us. And I have it too, how much I beat myself up or judge myself for things, and some friends that are close to me to see where that shows up for them. Like, we need that gentle compassion and have that mirrored from the people that are close to us to remind us like, oh, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. It's okay.
Yeah. And just because life is hard sometimes doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. And if you're not sure, think about if somebody offered you like you could have more of what would you want more of? Rest, peace, activity, friendships, connection, stability, communication, financial security, meaning in your life, satisfaction in your job. I mean, there's all kinds of comfort, creativity, all of those things, order, structure, less structure. I mean, it just depends on who you are, that those are things that can guide you of, if you had a magic wand, what would you want to change? And that can be a pull, or the things that you get jealous of. If you see other people that are doing stuff, you feel jealous. Is it an intimate relationship? Is it someone being very successful in their relationship? Is it someone who has really beautiful things? Not that it's about comparing and needing to have material things, but those things that we feel jealous about often indicate that we think we either should have it, we want it, and maybe we reevaluate and go, that's not really where my values are. I see colleagues doing stuff and I get really envious. And then I'm like, do I really want to do the work to get that? So maybe that's not for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. I know for me, I'm such a learn by doing kind of person that a lot of times something that I think I want, when I go and do it, I don't. Or how many times do I not want to do something? And then I'm like, woohoo, that was great. Like really just suspending judgment and giving yourself a chance. And it's just data points, right? It's just information that comes back to you.
Yeah.
And those small steps in the right direction, it can really take you to an entirely different place. I'm really inspired by your paddling stories. I really am. And I don't know that I've heard you put it quite that way, that you talked about it a few minutes ago, right? I'm just kind of picturing in my mind, like Steve's there with you and you're at the bay and you've got this kayak maybe, or you've got this aspiration. Maybe you don't even have one yet, right? Maybe you're renting them and it's just something that you want to do. And then to be like, wow. And I mean, I've definitely surprised myself in some ways. But it's those small things. It's almost like you do it before you realize you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as you look back, I remember there was one conversation that you and I were having about paddling. I hope this is okay to say, but it's your podcast.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's fine.
You're the boss. It was about looking back, and I think I was reminding you of your journey a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When you slipped, when you broke your wrists, with the things that you've faced, all the different fears that you've faced. And you have to live life like one breath at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you knew at the onset, and tried to handle all of the different aspects of your paddling journey as you were making that, like we don't live life that way. And so we're not going to live our aspirations that way.
Mm-hmm. You
can bleep out the word shouldn't. That's going to be mine. I'm going to eliminate the word should and get much better at my they, them pronouns. Those are my aspirations.
Your they, them pronouns. Yeah. Well, thank you for that reflection. And I forget. And if you're at a place where you need someone to buddy up to do things that are important to you, that's okay. Body doubling, having somebody with you to get hard tasks done, or you need to buddy up for exercise, whatever it takes. I used to have so much judgment around it. Whatever it takes to support you is really okay, as long as it's consensual.
Yes. Yes, as long as it's consensual. I love the creativity too. I think it was a podcast a little while ago that we were an episode where we were talking about, what does creativity look like in adulthood, and that kind of playfulness and finding your way and building that path as you go, right? One step at a time.
Yeah. Definitely.
Figuring out what works.
Yeah.
It can really change our whole attitudes towards failure too. I remember someone saying, okay, well, if it's going to fail, go ahead and fail faster so that I can get to trying the next thing that might work, and
right.
Having it be an adventure. And I know that's been the last few years tough for me. Like when life just really starts feeling like a chore, and kind of the ways in which we can sit with it and nurture the conditions that make it feel far more adventurous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, just I was thinking a lot about the HSP group that we put together, and I guess for HSPs, like creating a lifestyle that honors you and what you need, and to let that be a part of your New Year's too. Like whatever you're doing, are you tuning into yourself? We live in a non-HSP world. And what are the ways in which what you need is maybe different than the messages you received your whole life about what you should need?
Right.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that.
You and I coach each other on that, what we're struggling with in our personal lives and how can we support the other person for getting a schedule that works if we need to do tweaking, or something came up recently where I want to be supportive to somebody, but their schedule's very different than mine. And how do I honor what I need and not twist my schedule to meet their needs where I'm kind of helping them out. So having that support. And when you and I created the online HSP course together, we talked about what do we see the most in our practice? What are the areas where we see HSP struggle? What are the struggles that we see? And what are the tools that we tend to repeat the most? And then you and I created the videos together for it's a 10-week course, but I think 9 of the weeks we created videos together on each topic, but we hammered out what we felt like was important for each of the weeks. And then we did these videos together because that was the culmination of our experience of what we felt like people struggle with. I don't want to say the most, but typically.
And even that, I love. So when we were developing that was something that was born out of the beta group, right? Out of our doing it, that the videos made more sense, right? So just another way in which you learn by doing. If I waited until I was ready to do something, I would never do anything.
Right.
And so even that was born out of a process that was like, oh, wait a minute, let's do it this way. Let's try it that way. And it really worked and it was fun. And doing it together, I never would have done something like that myself, I don't think. I do need the buddying up has been so important. And again, part of the HSP group too is like you get to be surrounded by other HSPs. Like when are there, 8 or 10 of us in a room together, even if it's a virtual room? Not that often, right? To really get that support, hear other people's stories, realize I don't have 3 heads and maybe there's nothing wrong with me at all, right? And that there is no such thing as too sensitive. Just that what my experience is going to be different than other people's.
Yeah. Or too much. That's a theme that I see coming up very often in the groups of people feeling like they're too much. And I just had somebody in the current group sent me an email because I think in the 3rd week, so I created templates for every week. So everything's already done for the course, except for I show up weekly and we have fresh conversations, but the videos, the weekly templates are done. And somebody sent me an email and said, I think on the 3rd week, I just caution people that we can go share too much too fast. And that often feels like then we pull back. So to just be mindful. But this group member said that they thought that I had written that specifically for them because they overshared. And they didn't, we just had week 9 and they sent me this email before group saying that they just realized that I probably created these templates and that wasn't directed at them. So we had a discussion in group of who else has felt like they've overshared and asked this person, are you willing to receive feedback if anybody else perceives you that way? Because we have these internal dialogues on how we think we show up in the world and other people have such a different perception. And it's usually a very healthy perception. And getting those reality checks, I think, is incredibly powerful and having those conversations. And I said to this person, I feel sad because I wanted to get to know you more, but I really want to honor where people are at. And I don't force people to share. That's your choice because some people just need to observe. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. It's funny how those being mirrors for each other, especially now, because a lot of our self-concept originates in childhood. And I always think about, maybe I didn't have the clearest mirrors really mirroring me back to me, particularly some of the older parenting techniques, right, are just so, I hate the word manipulative, but whether it's having been shamed or like whatever, but my whole point being, we're not getting accurate mirrors back to us. And if we knew how much people project and how they respond to us is how, what's ever going on for them. And that can be held with kindness and curiosity.
Right.
The other thought that I had while you were talking is this being together and this needing each other. I remember being really stressed out about something and having somebody be there for me. Like even as therapists, when we do this and we study this and we do this all day for other people, when I'm dysregulated or I'm going through something, and sometimes it's also just like, it's a growth spurt. Like as adults, we continue to develop over our entire lifespan. So if I'm having like an up level and I'm still got one foot in my old way of thinking and one foot in my new way of thinking, that looks dysregulating, but it's a growing pain, really. It's growth that I need other people. Like I can't do this to myself. I can't, a mirror can't really reflect itself. It's hard. We can do self-reflection. I'm not saying we can't or we shouldn't try, but it's really hard to do in a vacuum. And so to have that kind of spaces for that honest feedback and reflecting back what people see, usually they're seeing something that's far more, than what we think of ourselves.
Right. I think the more we can be in environments, whether it's with a coach or a therapist or a partner or a good friend that's able to really do that corrective reparenting, that rework. And you and I do it with each other all the time. I mean, just this morning I did that. You're going through something and I tend to be pretty hard and fast about my perspective. And then I said, like, I worry that you're going to get mad or rebel against me because I just have a pretty firm stance on, I mean, it's your life and you do what you want. And I would never, whatever you do, I will love and support you. But I usually tend to be much more neutral. I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is like, I'm really concerned that you're mad at me, it was probably a 1 or a 2. But I still named it. I shot you a text and you were in session and didn't get back to me for a while. And I'm like, oh yeah, I sent that to you. But just being able to name those things is really important because I don't want to come off as being bossy or controlling. I don't want you to rebel against me, but I also want to speak my truth. And I think I have a really good ability to reflect things that you've told me historically that sometimes get a little clouded in the moment. I mean, I don't know.
I definitely appreciate that. And your reflections in those moments. And the feedback, like if I can't see it or it's not resonating, it's probably because I'm not ready to hear it or something,
Right.
and then even that again isn't yours, right? That would be mine to look at.
Right.
And in this case, I think I had already done what you were
You did.
before I even read it. I had done what you had suggested, and then it took me a little while, but then I'm like, yeah, no worries. Like,
Sure.
and being able to test that reality, right?
Right. Learning to communicate authentically and vulnerably in the moment. And we do that a lot in this group too. So a lot of it is this modeling that many people didn't get as children, that it's reparenting, creating a safe environment where people can choose to share or not to share. But I see so much like kind of ahas for people that they haven't experienced this before. And I love being able to create a safe environment where people can do that. And when we do exercises, I often will say, like, who else experiences that? Who else has experienced that? Again, it's so validating and normalizing because we are often told that we're being too much, we're being too sensitive, we're being too dramatic. And so we don't know. And having other people go like, no, I would have felt the same way. Again, turns us back to that center for ourselves as opposed to, well, this is what everybody else says. Am I okay? That's how we get empowered.
Yeah, it is really powerful.
Yeah. All right. So no resolutions unless you want to. I'm not doing it.
Let's see. So no resolutions. I might just dedicate the day to rest and dreaming so I can figure out where I want to go next.
Yeah. So what I would encourage you, the listeners, like, what do you want more of in the next year? I'd sure love some peace, especially politically and health-wise. I'd love to have things settle down just a little bit. I want more creativity. I want more play. I don't know. What do you want more of, Jen?
Connection, community.
Community.
Peace, externally and internally, for sure.
Yeah.
And really, just that word rest keeps coming back to me. Rest and trust. Trusting myself, trusting other people more, trusting the process of life.
Yeah. I'd like to eat more colorful foods that are natural. Eat around the rainbow. That's what my doctor says. Eat around the rainbow.
Yes. Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Yep. Yeah. So what are the things that you want more of? What are the things that you want less of? Just to kind of keep that in mind as far as intentions. And are there things that are helpful to help you approximate towards that? Little things. I mean, sometimes I've just like, I'm just going to have one vegetable this week to set the bar super, super low. And that allows space that maybe I end up having something every day. Maybe I have things a couple times a day, but at one a day, that's a hard one to fail. Although I'm sure I could fail it. But to allow ourselves room to be wherever we're at and to accept wherever we're at, I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. We all really are just kind of doing the best we can.
Yep. Anything else before we go?
I don't think so. Thanks for talking. Right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And this is the last episode of the year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye, Jen.
Bye.
Hey again. I'm curious to know, did that resonate for you? Do you like journaling? Do you like keeping a diary? Do you go back and read it? What kinds of rituals do you do at the end of the year that work for you? Do you do New Year's resolutions? My hope is that you are having time to rest and decompress and settle into the end of the year and starting the new year off with some, whatever it is that you're wanting, peace, calm, rest, tranquility. I don't know, whatever it is that you're wanting. If you're interested in working with Jen or with me, you can reach Jen at heartfulnessconsulting.com. You can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. If you're interested in the online HSP course, registration is going to start January 11th, and we'll have early bird registration through January 17th, regular registration January 18th through January 25th, and the online HSP course is going to run from February 6th through April 17th. No class on February 20 because it's President's Day. You can go to my website, which is unapologeticallysensitive.com and go to the HSP groups page. Something to keep in mind, though, is March 12th here in most of the states is daylight savings time. We're moving our clocks forward an hour. This can create a problem if you're abroad or if you're in a state that doesn't do daylight savings time, because it will shift the time that we meet. I try not to do this, but sometimes just with the timing of when the courses are. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. The subjects that we cover in the online HSP course are mindfulness and self-compassion, expectations and disappointments, identifying negative messages and turning them into strengths, perfectionism, embracing our emotions, self-care is non-negotiable, boundaries, communication, authenticity, and vulnerability, and creating a lifestyle that honors the HSP. It really is a beautiful place to come together with other HSPs to connect. Some of the groups have gone on to continue to meet after the 10 weeks is up. Not every group does that. Just if it's something that you're interested in or are curious about, if you go to my website, that page, there's lots of testimonials from people that have taken it. And if it's not for you, that's also okay too. I wish you a very happy new year. I hope you're doing well. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's your superpower. Have a blessed day.